I never expected to be the one holding my family together, let alone the one they'd so easily tear apart. But if there's one thing I've learned in the past year, it's this. When people see you as a wallet instead of a person, no amount of kindness will ever be enough. My name is Lucas. I'm 36, single, and, I'll just say it, financially well off. Not flashy rich, not private jet and gold bathtub, rich, but comfortable. I run my own business, a mid-sized logistics company I built from the ground up after college. It took a lot of sleepless nights, terrible takeout, and setbacks that nearly broke me, but I made it work. And over the past decade, it's turned into something I'm proud of. I don't flaunt it. No designer suits or lumbos. Just clean clothes, a decent house, and the peace of mind that I can take care of the people I love, which is what I've always tried to do. My dad, Raymond, is 67 now. Tough old guy, retired firefighter. Raised us with firm discipline and softer eyes than he'd like to admit. He did his best after Mom passed away from cancer when I was 19. My brother, Derek, was only 15 at the time, and the two of them clung to each other in ways I sometimes envied. Derek was always the golden child, not necessarily because he deserved it more, but because he was the one who needed more. Or maybe that's just what I kept telling myself whenever things felt unfair. Derek, now 32, married young. His wife, Kayla, came into the picture when he was barely 23. She was sharp-tongued, pretty in that magazine cover kind of way, and clearly used to getting what she wanted. I remember meeting her at a barbecue Dad hosted when they were still dating. She barely looked me in the eye, and when she did, there was this flicker of assessment, like she was calculating whether I was worth impressing. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. Not in her world. They got married within the year. Had twin boys not long after. From the outside, they looked like the perfect young family. Smiling Christmas cards, matching outfits, hashtags like #BlessLife. But the truth behind the filter was different. Derek bounced between jobs. Some he left on his own. Others, well, there were disagreements. Kayla didn't work. Being a full-time mom is already a job, she'd say whenever anyone brought it up. And hey, I get it. Raising twins isn't easy. But they lived in a house far too big for their income, drove cars with payments they couldn't keep up with, and enrolled the boys in a private school that charged more per year than some colleges. Every time the bills piled up, Derek came to me. And every time, I helped. At first, it was small stuff. A few hundred for groceries. Then it became 1,000 to cover rent. Then $5,000 when they were months behind on school tuition. The worst part? I always said yes. Not because I was trying to buy their love, but because those boys, my nephews, deserved better than to suffer for their parents' mistakes. I didn't want them pulled from their school or made to feel the tension in the house. So I wrote the checks, sometimes without even being asked directly. Dad told me I was enabling them. Maybe I was. But I told myself I was just helping family. That's what family does, right? Still, over the years, the thank yous started to fade. The updates on how the kids were doing stopped coming unless I asked. Derek never offered to pay a dime back. Kayla never acknowledged the help at all. And somewhere in the pit of my gut, I started to feel less like a brother and more like an ATM with a blood connection. The resentment simmered, quietly, under the surface. I never brought it up at family gatherings. I smiled through it all. Birthdays, holidays, summer cookouts. I was there, gift in hand, pretending everything was okay. I think I feared that if I ever said what I was really thinking, the fragile bond holding us together would finally snap. But then came my dad's birthday dinner. It was a Saturday evening in late March. Dad had insisted on something low-key, a family meal at his favorite Italian place. No decorations, no surprise party, just good food and good company. I booked a private room at the restaurant and covered everything. Menu, drinks, even a cake with happy birthday, old man, and messy white frosting. We were 8 in total. Me, Dad, Derek and Kayla, their twins, and Kayla's sister and her husband, who'd flown in for a visit. The night started off well enough. The kids were in high spirits. Derek was unusually talkative, and Dad looked genuinely happy. We passed around wine, shared appetizers, laughed over old photos I had printed and framed as a gift. And then, it happened. We were midway through the main course when Kayla leaned back in her chair, sipped her wine, and let out a casual little laugh. "You know," she said, glancing around the table with that rehearsed smile of hers. "I told the boys the other day that Uncle Lucas isn't just family. He's our funding." The table froze. A beat of silence. Then her sister snorted. Her husband chuckled. Derek laughed loudly. Even Dad gave a half-hearted smile, like he wasn't sure if it was a joke or a jab. But the kids? They laughed, too, like they'd heard it before. I didn't laugh. Kayla smirked at me, unfazed. "Oh, come on," she said. "It's a compliment. I mean, where would we be without your generous donations, huh?" My fork clinked against the plate. I felt the blood drain from my face, not in anger, but in something colder. Something that felt like betrayal and clarity, all tangled together. I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Not even Dad. Derek was still grinning, cheeks flushed from wine, completely oblivious. And all I could think was, they really don't see it. They don't see me. In that moment, something shifted. A part of me that had been holding on, hoping things would change, that someday they'd appreciate me, finally let go. I set my napkin down, carefully, and forced a smile. "That's one way to put it," I said, my voice quieter than usual. Too quiet for the storm starting to build behind my ribs. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze. I paid the bill. I hugged Dad. I said goodbye to the boys. But I didn't look at Kayla again. And I didn't say much to Derek. I drove home in silence, the hum of the tires louder than the thoughts running through my head. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I kept replaying her words. "You're not family. You're our funding." And the worst part? She wasn't wrong. That's exactly how they saw me. Not as a brother. Not as a son. Not as an uncle. Just as a walking, talking tuition payment. That next morning, with a tight chest and steady hands, I opened my laptop, logged into the school's online portal, and I made a decision. I was done. I stopped the automatic payments. Drafted an email to the school's finance office. Polite. Professional. But final. I woke up Monday morning to 10 missed calls and a string of unread texts, all from Derek. I didn't even need to open them to know what they were about. I stared at my phone while the screen lit up again, his name flashing like a warning light. I let it go to voicemail. Then came Kayla. One message after another. Her texts didn't start with "Hi" or "Can we talk?" No, they started with "What did you do?" and escalated quickly. Her tone shifted from confusion to accusation in the span of an hour. At one point, she wrote, "The boys are scared, Lucas. They don't understand why they can't go to school today. Do you even care?" As if I was the one who dropped the ball. As if I was punishing two innocent kids instead of finally taking my hand off a sinking ship. It wasn't that I didn't care. I did. That was the problem. By noon, my dad called. He rarely ever calls. He prefers texts unless something serious. I answered this one. His voice was heavy, that low rumble he uses when he's already tired of the drama. "Lucas," he sighed, "why didn't you say something?" I took a breath, then another. "Because I didn't think anyone would listen. You could have told me you were feeling taken advantage of." "I didn't feel taken advantage of, Dad. I was taken advantage of." He went quiet. I could hear the TV in the background, probably one of those game shows he leaves on for background noise. "It's just the kids. They don't deserve this." "I agree," I said. "But maybe this is what it takes for their parents to finally grow up." Dad didn't argue. He just muttered something about hoping it wouldn't get ugly and hung up. But it did get ugly. By Tuesday, Kayla had made it her personal mission to turn the entire family against me. Her sister posted a cryptic Facebook status about how some people only give so they can take it back and play victim. A few cousins, ones I hadn't spoken to in months, started liking and commenting on it. My aunt called to ask if everything was okay between me and Derek. When I explained the situation, she clicked her tongue and said, "Well, that's family, Lucas. You don't just turn off support like a faucet." But that's exactly what I did. And it wasn't just the tuition. I canceled the monthly transfers I had set up to help them with utilities. The grocery app I'd been using to send food deliveries to their house. Gone. The gas cards I'd occasionally mail to Derek with a little note that said "just in case." Done. I pulled the plug on everything. For the first time in years, I made myself unavailable. And that's when the real masks came off. Derek showed up at my place that Friday. Unannounced. I was working from home, answering emails at the kitchen counter when I heard the furious pounding at the door. I knew it was him even before I opened it. Something in the rhythm, too fast, too loud, sounded like desperation mixed with entitlement. He didn't even wait for a greeting. "You just cut us off," he said, storming past me into the living room like it was still his space. I shut the door behind him and followed slowly. "You could have called first." "I did call," he snapped, throwing his arms up. You ignored me. I didn't ignore you. I just didn't want to talk until you calmed down. Oh, I'm calm, he said, his eyes wild. Kayla's the one losing it. That's funny, I muttered. She seemed pretty composed when she made that joke at dinner. Derek flinched. It was a joke. No, Derek. It was how she really feels. And you laughed. The kids laughed. So clearly, it's something they've heard before. He looked away, chewing on the inside of his cheek. You're being sensitive. I let that one sit in the air for a moment. Just hovered there between us like smoke. Do you even realize how much I've given you? I asked quietly. Do you know how many months I paid your mortgage when you didn't even ask? Do you remember the time Kayla wanted to take the boys to Disneyland and you said you were strapped, so I surprised them with a trip? That wasn't a surprise, Derek. That was pity. He flared up. So now it's pity? You're rewriting history just to justify this. No, I said. I'm just finally telling the truth. He shook his head, pacing. You're punishing my kids because you're mad at Kayla. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm stopping. There's a difference. He stopped pacing. Looked me dead in the eye. You're not just my brother. You were the only reason we could keep the boys in that school. Do you know how humiliating it was to get that email from the principal? Do you know how Kayla looked at me when I said I didn't know what happened? I stayed silent. You left me out to dry, man. I stepped closer. You left yourself out to dry. I was just the umbrella. He didn't say anything after that. Just stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I stood there for a long time, staring at the hallway. I felt sick to my stomach, not with guilt, but with something heavier. A strange combination of grief and relief. For the next few weeks, things got icy. Kayla blocked me on everything. Derek didn't reach out again. The twins' school called me twice, probably hoping it was a mistake. I didn't answer. I started seeing less of my extended family, too. Invitations to Sunday dinners and birthday parties dried up. It was like I'd been excommunicated, silently and thoroughly. Dad was the only one who stayed neutral. Sort of. He'd text every now and then, updates about his blood pressure or what he was watching on TV. But I could tell he was uncomfortable. Torn. I didn't blame him. He was too old for this kind of drama, and yet too close to avoid it. Then came the final straw. It was mid-May, about 6 weeks after the birthday dinner. I had just wrapped up a brutal week at work and was looking forward to a quiet weekend. I stopped by Dad's house Saturday morning with bagels and coffee, something I did every couple of weeks. He seemed off the moment I walked in. Fidgety. Kept glancing toward the hallway. Everything okay? I asked, setting the bag down on the counter. He hesitated, then motioned for me to sit. I wasn't going to tell you, he said. But you're going to find out anyway. I stiffened. Find out what? He sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose. Derek, they're moving in here. Temporarily. I blinked. What? They're selling the house. Can't afford it anymore. The boys are transferring to public school. Things are tight. They asked if they could stay here for a couple of months. I stared at him. And you said yes. I didn't know what else to do, he said quietly. They're my son. My grandkids. And I'm not. Of course you are. But you're okay. You're doing fine. There it was. The sentence I'd always felt, but never heard out loud. You're doing fine, so you don't need me like they do. The unspoken rule of every family with uneven love. Whoever struggles the loudest gets the most hands. I stood up. Do they know I come here? He hesitated. I don't think Kayla cares. I scoffed. Right. I left without eating a single bite. Drove around for an hour. Aimless, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I couldn't explain why it hit me so hard. Maybe it was the symbolism of it. Kayla, who mocked me, who never thanked me, who turned her kids against me with backhanded jokes, now sleeping under my father's roof. The same roof I paid off years ago when Dad's pension wasn't enough to keep up with the repairs. The same roof I put solar panels on, repainted, and renovated the kitchen in, all quietly, never asking for credit. I stopped visiting after that. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. And then, something happened that changed everything. I came home one evening in early June to find a letter taped to my front door. Not mailed. Not slid under the mat. Taped, like an angry roommate's passive-aggressive note. It was from Kayla. The letter was 2 pages long, handwritten in aggressive cursive. She accused me of abandoning the family, of weaponizing my money, of damaging her children's future. She said I was jealous of their bond with Dad, and that my bitter bachelor lifestyle had turned me cold. She ended the letter with a line I'll never forget. You're not part of this family anymore. You're just the guy who used to help. I sat down on my porch, letter in hand, heart pounding in my chest. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just done helping. I was done playing nice. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not Dad. Not my closest friend, Nate. I didn't post some cryptic quote on social media or rage text Derek. I didn't even rip it up. I just folded it neatly, placed it in a drawer with a stack of utility bills and tax documents, and let the silence settle. And that silence, it was deafening. For weeks, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, no invitations. Not even the usual Happy Father's Day barbecue flyer from Dad. I scrolled through photos from previous years, grinning snapshots of Derek manning the grill, the twins playing tag, me holding a cold beer with one hand and Tons with the other. This year, there was nothing. No call from Dad. No, hey, we missed you. Just absence. Like I'd been quietly erased from the family group chat, and no one bothered to tell me. I didn't realize how much I'd been relying on those little traditions until they were gone. How much I'd let being needed substitute for being loved. The truth was, I'd been buying my seat at the table for years, and now that I wasn't paying anymore, they'd simply pulled the chair out from under me. For the first time in a long while, I felt untethered. Work, once my safe zone, became harder to focus on. I missed meetings, forgot follow-ups, started waking up late, and skipping breakfast altogether. I'd always prided myself on discipline, but now even brushing my teeth felt like a task instead of a routine. The walls of my home, which I used to cherish for their peace and privacy, began to feel too still. The silence wasn't calming, it was accusing. I'd walk into the living room and swear I could still hear Kayla's voice from that dinner echoing in the back of my mind. You're not family. You're our funding. It ate at me. Every time I saw a parent walking their kids to school, I thought about the twins. Were they adjusting to public school? Were they struggling? Did they even ask about me? I wondered, late at night, if I'd done the right thing. And that's when it hit me. This was my rock bottom. Not some dramatic breakdown or public humiliation. Just the quiet, gnawing ache of realizing that I'd built my identity around people who never actually saw me, who only loved what I gave them, who smiled when I paid and turned away when I stopped. But here's the thing about hitting bottom. There's nowhere left to fall. So I started climbing. It didn't happen all at once. There was no Hollywood montage, no motivational speech in the mirror. Just small, intentional steps. First, I cleaned the house. Really cleaned it. I threw away old birthday cards from Kayla and Derek, outdated school photos I'd taped to the fridge, receipts from gifts I'd sent. I boxed up the clutter that had started to feel like evidence of my own desperation. Then I started walking every morning. At first it was just around the block. No headphones, no phone calls. Just the crunch of gravel underfoot and the sound of my own breathing. It became my ritual, my reset. Slowly, I added more steps, then hills, then trails. I'd come home sweaty, legs aching, but with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. I reached out to people I'd neglected, old college friends, co-workers I used to grab lunch with, even Nate, who I hadn't talked to in nearly a year because I was always too busy helping family. We started meeting on Sundays for pickup basketball and beers after. No drama, no guilt trips, just laughter and trash talk and inside jokes that reminded me who I used to be before I became Uncle Lucas the Wallet. Professionally, I took a long, hard look at my company. I'd been coasting, managing things from a distance, letting middle managers handle the mess. But I realized I missed the hands-on part. The building, the solving. I revamped our operations, brought in a new logistics coordinator, and even started mentoring two younger guys who reminded me of myself at 25. Ambitious, scrappy, hungry to learn. Watching them grow reignited something in me. Pride, maybe. Purpose. And that's when the real shift happened. I started investing in me. I signed up for a business leadership retreat. Something I never would have bothered with before. Too expensive, too self-helpy. But it turned out to be one of the most eye-opening weekends of my life. I sat in a room full of strangers, most of them successful in their fields, and we talked about things I hadn't admitted even to myself. Fear, identity, boundaries. One guy, a tech entrepreneur from Seattle, said something that stuck with me. Love isn't what people say when they're holding a gift. It's what they do when you have nothing to give. It broke something open in me. I realized I'd been equating love with service, value with utility. I thought being the provider meant being indispensable. But really, it had just made me invisible. After the retreat, I came home with a plan. Not just to keep growing, but to protect my growth. To stop apologizing for saying no. To build relationships based on presence, not presence. I also started volunteering at a youth mentorship program once a week. The kids came from all kinds of backgrounds, some with stable homes, others not so much. But they listened. They asked questions. They showed gratitude. One boy, Caleb, reminded me so much of Derek when we were kids, full of energy, always trying to prove himself. I started working with him on a science project, and he lit up when he finally got his makeshift volcano to erupt properly. That moment, his grin, his excitement, it meant more to me than every forced thank you card from my nephews combined. Funny how strangers can make you feel more like family than blood ever did. 3 months passed, then 4, and the silence from Derek's side remained unbroken. Until one Tuesday morning in early September, when my assistant buzzed into my office and said, Lucas? There's someone here to see you." I frowned. I wasn't expecting any meetings. "It's your brother," she added, her voice cautious. I hadn't heard his name spoken aloud in months. It landed heavy in the air. I debated saying I was busy. I debated walking out the back door. But something told me to face it. So I nodded. When Derek walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked thinner, hair messier, shirt wrinkled. His eyes had bags under them I'd never seen before. He didn't smile, didn't even offer a handshake, just sat across from me and said, "I didn't come here to fight." "Good," I said. He hesitated. "Kayla and I, we're separating." I blinked. "What?" "She moved out 2 weeks ago, took the boys, said I was too much of a child to be a real partner." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask if he was okay. Another part of me remembered that letter taped to my door. "I'm living at Dad's still," he continued, "trying to keep it together, trying to get a job that actually pays." I stayed quiet. "I came here," he said slowly, "because I owe you an apology." That caught me off guard. I didn't see it before, he went on. "But you were right. About everything. I let her twist things. I let myself lean on you too much. I should have been the one providing for my kids. I should have told her to stop saying those things. I should have stood up for you." I looked at him. Really looked at him. He meant it. And yet, I didn't feel ready to forgive. Not fully. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But it doesn't erase the damage." "I know," he said. "I just wanted to say it, even if it's too late." And with that, he stood up, started to walk out. But right before he reached the door, he turned back and added something that sent a cold ripple down my spine. "She's planning something," he said. "Kayla. She's mad that the money stopped. She thinks you owe her. I don't know the details, but just be careful." Then he left, just like that. And I sat there, heart pounding, realizing that my climb wasn't over. It's a strange thing, preparing for a storm you can't see. You can't quite tell how hard it'll hit or where it'll land. All you know is that something is coming, and if you're not ready, you'll get flattened. That's how I felt for days after Derek's warning. She's planning something. I replayed those 3 words over and over. What did it mean? Something legal? Something social? A smear campaign? A stunt? I didn't know. And Kayla wasn't exactly the type to do something halfway. She liked clean wins, public ones. If she was planning something, it wouldn't be quiet. It wouldn't be subtle. She wanted to hurt me. And not physically. That wasn't her style. Kayla preferred wounds you couldn't point to. Reputation, isolation, leverage. Those were her weapons. And she'd wield them with a manicured hand and a smug little smile. But this time, she'd be aiming at someone who wasn't afraid to fight back. The first thing I did was call my attorney, Henry. Mid-50s, calm as a monk, and ruthless when he needed to be. He'd handled a few contract negotiations for me in the past and helped me clean up some legal messes in my early startup days. Hypothetically, I began, if someone I used to financially support starts threatening to come after me, legally or otherwise, is there anything I should do preemptively? Henry didn't even flinch. Start documenting. Everything. Every text, every email, every favor, every dollar. Paper trails are your friend. I nodded. I've got receipts going back 7 years. Tuition payments, mortgage contributions, grocery orders, all from my accounts. Not a single repayment. Good, he said. That establishes the help was voluntary. Unless there was a contract or written agreement stating repayment, you're clear. What if she tries to sue for emotional distress or slander? He snorted. Let her. No court is going to side with someone whose only claim is my ex-brother-in-law stopped funding my lifestyle. Especially if she mocked you publicly before that. But if she tries to go nuclear, we'll be ready. That helped. A little. The next step? I started collecting more than receipts. I pulled bank statements, tax filings, every tuition invoice I'd paid, screenshots of every time Kayla or Derek had asked for money. I even found old texts from Kayla thanking me for helping with rent. Rare, but they existed. I uploaded everything into a private cloud folder and shared it with Henry. Then, I started protecting the rest of my life. I updated the security system on my house. New cameras, motion sensors, the works. Not because I thought Kayla would show up in the middle of the night, but because I didn't trust her not to send someone else. I also installed a Ring camera at my dad's place, with his permission. After all, Kayla had lived there for months, knew his routines, and if she was out for revenge, she might use him to get to me. I even added two-factor authentication to every account I had. Banking, utilities, even Spotify, just in case. But the real turning point came a week later. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I'd stopped by Dad's place to drop off some groceries. He was doing better now, walking more, eating less processed food. The separation between Derek and Kayla had weirdly lightened his mood. He didn't say it, but I could tell. Less tension in his shoulders. More laughter during our conversations. We were sitting on the porch, sipping lemonade, when he said something that shifted everything. She was going through the garage last week, he said casually. I blinked. Kayla. He nodded. Said she left some boxes there. I didn't think much of it. But later that night, I realized something was missing. I froze. Missing? Yeah, he said. That folder you gave me a while back. The one with the deed copies, insurance papers, renovation contracts? Gone. My blood ran cold. That folder contained everything about Dad's house, including the fact that I was the one who legally owned it. See, after Mom passed, Dad struggled financially. Pension wasn't enough. Property taxes were rising. The house needed major repairs, roof, plumbing, foundation work. He refused to sell it, but couldn't afford to fix it either. So I bought it. Quietly. Legally. On paper, it belonged to me. But I let him live there rent-free, under one condition. We never made a big deal about it. It was still his home. I hadn't thought twice about that arrangement. Until now. Are you sure it's gone? I asked. He looked troubled. I turned the garage upside down. It's not there. That's when I knew. Kayla had found out. She must have discovered the paperwork, realized the house was in my name, and taken the documents. What for? I didn't know yet. But it wasn't good. She's trying to build a case, I said out loud. Dad frowned. What kind of case? The kind that paints me as the villain. It made sense. If she could spin the story, turn me into the cold, calculating son who bought his father's house and used it to control the family, she could win sympathy. Maybe she wanted to claim I forced them out, that I used financial leverage to isolate them. Maybe she thought she could twist public perception, or worse, get a court to intervene somehow. I left Dad's house in a daze. I spent the entire drive home connecting dots. Why had she taped that letter to my door instead of sending a text? Because she wanted a scene. A paper trail. Something she could refer back to in a legal context. Why had she waited so long to make her next move after the birthday dinner? Because she'd been planning. Why had Derek come to warn me? Only now? Maybe he overheard something. Maybe he saw her packing the documents. It didn't matter. She'd declared war. So I started preparing for battle. The first thing I did was call my friend Jessie. She's a digital forensic specialist and runs her own tech firm. We hadn't talked in over a year, but when I told her what was going on, she didn't hesitate. I need help tracking activity, I told her. Social media mentions. Public records. Anything under my name that looks off. Got it, she said. Give me a week. While she worked behind the scenes, I started reaching out to people in Kayla's orbit. Quietly. Not to start drama, just to plant seeds. I called an old mutual friend of ours, Amanda, who used to be close with Kayla before the twins were born. She's been weird lately, Amanda admitted. Talking a lot about how men always use money to control women. About how she sacrificed her career for the family and got nothing in return. That was it. That was her angle. She wasn't just painting me as a manipulative brother-in-law. She was turning this into a gendered narrative. Playing the long-suffering mother, the betrayed wife, the woman who gave everything and got tossed aside. It was brilliant and dangerous because people love a villain. And she'd chosen me. So I decided to beat her at her own game. I hired a private investigator, not to dig up dirt, but to document, to follow her activities, where she lived, who she was meeting, if she was working, if she was talking to media, if she was visiting legal offices. He found plenty. She'd been staying with a friend across town, meeting with a local journalist from an online magazine, the kind that loves scandal. She'd also met twice with a paralegal who specialized in family disputes and elder rights. That last one worried me. If she was building a case that I'd manipulated or taken advantage of Dad to gain control of the house, things could get messy, especially if she got him to say something, anything, that sounded like coercion. And with how trusting Dad was, it wouldn't be hard. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I recorded him. The next time I visited, I came armed with fresh bagels and a hidden audio recorder in my jacket. I casually brought up the house, the arrangement, the ownership. He confirmed everything. Freely, clearly, without pressure. "You saved me, Lucas," he said at one point. "I'd have lost this place if it weren't for you." I kept the recording, sent it to Henry. We had it transcribed and time-stamped. But I wasn't done. I also reached out to the school the twins used to attend, asked if they could send me a full ledger of tuition payments, every receipt, every payment date, every check. They did. 7 years of records, all under my name. Then I contacted my accountant and asked for donation letters from every time I'd helped Derek with taxes, every time I'd gifted money under the legal threshold, every time I'd transferred funds directly to their mortgage provider. The stack of evidence was growing. And then, finally, Jessie called. "Lucas," she said, "you're going to want to see this." She sent me screenshots, Kayla's anonymous Reddit account, poorly masked, where she'd been posting in a popular legal advice forum under the name Tired Mama 83. She hadn't named names, but she'd written paragraph after paragraph describing a wealthy in-law who used money to buy control over her children's lives. She claimed I'd manipulated her husband, forced them out of their home, and blackmailed the family with money. Thousands of upvotes, dozens of supportive comments, people urging her to go public. One even suggested starting a GoFundMe. The email went out at 10:14 a.m. on a Wednesday. I remember the exact time because I sat at my desk, staring at the send button for a solid 30 seconds before finally clicking it. Not because I hesitated. No, I was far past that point, but because I wanted to savor it. That quiet stillness before the storm. The peace that comes when you know you're about to change the game entirely. The subject line read, "Clarifying facts regarding recent allegations." I sent it to 20 people. Friends, family, colleagues, even a few extended relatives who'd recently stopped returning my calls. Attached were 4 PDFs, a full breakdown of every financial contribution I had ever made to Derek and Kayla, from tuition payments to mortgage assistance, dated and highlighted. A signed and notarized statement from my father, confirming that I had purchased his home with his consent, that he requested my help, and that no coercion had ever taken place. A transcription of his audio confirmation, which I kept in case anyone doubted the statement was genuine. A series of screenshots, carefully curated, from Kayla's anonymous Reddit account and her now-deleted Facebook posts, where she'd hinted at outing me and exposing how rich men ruin families. I didn't offer commentary. I didn't insult anyone. I simply stated, in light of recent rumors and misrepresentations, I thought it best to provide the full context. Please review the documents and make your own judgments. I have no interest in drama, only in protecting my name. It was surgical, clean, cold, and best of all, irrefutable. But that was just phase 1. Phase 2. That started an hour later, when I texted Kayla directly for the first time in months. "Since you've taken an interest in property rights, I thought you should be aware that as legal owner of Dad's house, I've decided to enforce the occupancy clause we agreed to when I purchased it. You have 30 days to vacate, effective immediately." I knew she was still technically listed under the address, even though she'd moved out. I also knew she hadn't updated her mailing address. That little oversight would prove critical, because when you're still listed as a resident in a home you don't own, and you've been publicly slandering the owner, it gets messy, legally messy. She didn't reply to the text. Instead, she called Derek. And Derek called me. His voice trembled when he spoke. "You're really kicking her out?" he asked. "She doesn't live there," I replied calmly. "But her name is still attached to the address. That's a liability I'm no longer willing to carry. But she's free to find her own place. I interrupted. Just like she asked you to do when she left. He went quiet. I'm not doing this to hurt anyone. I continued. I'm doing this to protect what's mine. What I've earned. What I've given. He sighed, defeated. She's losing it, man. She started it, Derek. I'm just finishing it. Click. No more phone calls after that. That night, I got a call from Amanda, the mutual friend I'd reconnected with during my intel gathering phase. You really did it, she said, almost in awe. People are talking. I figured they would. Kayla's trying to spin it, she added, saying you forged the documents, manipulated your dad. But no one's buying it. Not anymore. She's unraveling. Unraveling. That was a good word for it. By the end of the week, she'd taken down her Reddit account. The posts were archived, of course, but the original source was gone. Her Facebook went private. Then, completely dark. Whatever journalist she'd been working with backed off. Jesse confirmed that the article they'd been drafting had been paused indefinitely. I wasn't surprised. Facts have a funny way of disrupting narratives. But I wasn't done. Because even though Kayla's public crusade had crumbled, she still had one more avenue left. Legal. I needed to close that door permanently. So I filed a cease and desist through Henry's office. Formal. Precise. It outlined every false statement she'd made, the potential damage to my business reputation, and the legal consequences of further defamation. She received it 3 days later. This time, she did respond. Through a lawyer. I got a reply that essentially boiled down to, my client regrets any statements that may have been misinterpreted and agrees to refrain from any further public commentary on the matter. Which, in legal terms, is basically, please don't sue us. We surrender. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because the damage had already been contained. The truth had been documented. And my name? It was clean. The next month was quiet. Kayla officially removed her name from Dad's mailing address. She stopped showing up at the house entirely. Rumors slowed down, then stopped. The family members who had distanced themselves began reaching out again, some with apologies, others pretending they'd never doubted me in the first place. I didn't respond to most of them. Forgiveness was optional, and I was tired of handing it out like spare change. Derek, to his credit, began trying. Slowly, he started checking in on Dad more, picked up extra shifts, paid for his own groceries. He sent me a long email one day, a real apology this time. Not dramatic, not defensive, just raw. I see it now, he wrote. How much I leaned on you. How much I let her twist things. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying. I didn't write back right away. I let it sit for a week. Then I replied with one sentence. Trying is more than you've done in years. Keep going. We haven't fully repaired things. But there's a crack in the wall now. And sometimes, that's enough. As for Kayla, she faded. Whatever online community she tried to build stopped caring. Her GoFundMe. Yeah, she actually started one. Barely made it past $300 before the comments section turned against her. People posted my receipts. The PDFs. The audio transcript. She deleted the fundraiser. Moved across town. Last I heard, she was working part-time at a salon and trying to rebrand as a wellness coach. The irony isn't lost on me. But the real victory, the one that mattered, came months later. It was Thanksgiving. Dad hosted, as usual. Smaller gathering this time. Just me, Derek, the twins, and a couple of close friends. No extended family. No drama. No secondhand tension hanging in the air like smoke. After dinner, as we sat on the porch watching the last of the autumn leaves fall, Dad turned to me and said something I'll never forget. You gave us all a second chance, he said, by finally choosing yourself. I didn't respond right away. Just looked out at the yard. The same yard I'd helped him fix. The one I used to mow when I was 12, back when I thought family was something you earned by being useful. I sipped my coffee. I didn't want revenge, I said eventually. I wanted respect. He nodded. And now you have it. And I did. Not because I forced it. Not because I paid for it. But because I earned it. The storm had passed. The silence had returned. Only this time, it felt like peace. And as the sun dipped below the horizon and laughter echoed from inside the house, I knew something with absolute clarity. I had finally taken my seat at the table.